So, after an incredible run at the end of 2024, we need answers to, is 2025 going to be the year where Tesla finally breaks out and goes on another rocket ship right back up to the moon again? Or is 2025 setting up to be the year that Tesla finally comes back down to earth because everything is not as it seems out there in the market? Well, let's talk about Tesla 2025 today, but of course, Wall Street has an opinion on it, some of which I agree with, but a lot of it I don't agree with at all. So let's get down to the bottom of what's true, what's not, and what we can expect for Tesla here in 2025. Just make sure you like the video if you like getting the truth without the hype, because that's exactly what you're going to get today. Now, if you don't have your plan set up for 2025 yet, it is critical. If you don't know how to do valuations, anything else like that, you need to understand that. You need to start off 2025 on the right foot because it is going to be a volatile year. That much I know. So the holiday sale, I got to end it. I forgot to end it last week, so it's ending this Sunday, guys. Make sure you check out the pinned comment down there. I'll talk more about it at the end. But let's get into this video right here, see exactly what Wall Street's saying, and let's figure out, is there some truth to what they're saying? And let's get rid of all the BS as well, because we don't need to start our year with their BS already.
So Tesla right now on pace to snap its 5-day losing streak. The stock up around 7% right now. It was capped, that losing streak capped by yesterday's sell-off on the heels of disappointing deliveries data. Let's take a look at the closer at the numbers, growing competition for the EV giant and outlook for the EV space. For that, I want to bring in our panel, Carl Brower, executive analyst, iSeeCars.com, and Steve Wesley, founder, managing partner, the Wesley Group. Thank you both so much for joining us this afternoon. Carl, let's start out with you, and let's talk about that sales decline and missed expectations when it comes to the quarter, less than 500,000 vehicles for Q4. How concerning is, though, that first year-over-year sales decline?
Well, it's always how it starts, right? I mean, it's a very small decline. A lot of people want to act like it's not that big a deal, but, it's unprecedented. He's grown sales every year till now, and I just don't see how you avoid the obvious tie to increased competition from Western automakers jumping into this space over the last 3, 4, 5 years, and even more so from China and their advantages in terms of cost structure and being able to produce a lot of electric vehicles at a lower cost, price them lower than Tesla. And, there's a lot of domestic brands or a lot of foreign brands in China that have been pushed out by their domestic market. Their domestic market share has gone doubled in the last 5 years. Tesla's holding on better than most, but you wonder if this is an inevitability. Is he going to start getting pushed out of China too?
All right, so let's kind of address the deliveries there first off. I wasn't, how do I phrase this? I kind of figured this year was going to be, at the beginning of the year, I kind of figured they weren't going to hit the targets this year that they wanted to hit, just because it was going to be a tough year overall, given everything Elon kind of gave us, not just past October, but the October before then, in regards to the headwinds that were coming. So that right there, I wasn't as concerned with. I do find it interesting that you did see other sales increase across other models, obviously specifically with China. But again, that's something that's been known, and the market in China is large enough that I'm not concerned about Tesla, quote unquote, getting pushed out of the market per se. Just, I don't think us as consumers understand how large that market is over there. And how there's going to be multiple winners in this whole thing anyways. And I don't need Tesla to be the winner in order for me to make a lot of money on Tesla, in order for them to sell a lot of cars long-term in China, obviously across the US and everywhere else. So that right there is kind of a big differentiating factor there that I think a lot of folks jump to conclusions on a lot of these other things happening, when I'm kind of like, okay, so for me, I'm not really all that concerned right now. And I'm also thankful that Tesla has other hedges in the event that becomes true and they do start to struggle on the automotive side of the business a little bit. And by struggle, I mean just not selling as much as everybody projected. Now, if you're one of those folks where you're like, oh, Tesla should be at $1,500 right now, and it's going to be at $10,000 per share in 5 years, and $100,000 per share, and all that other ridiculous stuff like that, then this is really, really concerning because you need Tesla to be the leader in all. You need them to be the biggest seller in China, the biggest seller in the US, the biggest seller in the world. And right now, it doesn't look like that's going to be the way that it's going to work out. Now, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but all these people, all these ridiculous targets, that's where a lot of that sort of stuff comes from. That's where a lot of the concern comes from if you're investing in that particular style. Now, if you watch this channel, I'm very conservative with Tesla. I own a lot of Tesla. I believe in Tesla, but I don't need Tesla to be 100% of all EVs in order for me to make a lot of money in the stock. I'm sorry, it just doesn't, but I also don't expect my stock to 10x every year like a lot of the folks who get into that sort of investing, and I use air quotes because it's not investing, it's gambling. It's a different thing altogether. But for those of us that are investors in Tesla long-term, I'm just fine. And as long as you're prudent with your buys in Tesla, i.e. you avoided 400 in 2021 and you were buying in the, under $200 range here for the past 2 or 3 years, you're sitting just fine right now. And I feel no need to buy Tesla right now at this level. And I can allow the stock and the fundamentals to catch up to the stock price and be patient with that. But if you're one of those folks that bought in at 400 thinking it was going to be at 1200 in a year, that's a completely different scenario. And that's where I would be more concerned if I was that type of investor. But I'm not. So I'm very, very happy right now. And I'm willing to wait and see what all happens. And like I said, Tesla has some other hedges we'll talk about here in a little bit later to where I'm less concerned. Now, again, if you have those crazy price targets, concerned. But because I don't, I'm much less concerned about Tesla, regardless of what happens here in the near term.
Steve, is this a vulnerability for Tesla? And you've noted that this year is a make or break year for Tesla. What do you mean by that?
Well, look, first, this is a tough quarter for Tesla. They sold 495,000 units, way below the 507,000 analysts were predicting and the 515,000 they needed to beat last year's numbers. So it's a tale of two cities for Tesla. On the one hand, stocks up 63% 2024, but with sales being down for the first time in history, just keep in mind in 2022, they were up 71%, torrid growth, 51% in 2023. So to see this slowing down so much is a big problem. On the one hand, Tesla, the best known EV company in the world, we just have to ask for how long. And I think the punchline is the rest of the world, especially BYD and the Chinese, are catching up quickly. Tesla's going to have the work cut out for them.
Carl, often Tesla is looked at, especially for shareholders who stick by this company, as more of a focus on the man versus the mission. And even Elon would often talk about that. The future of the company is more important. It's an AI company. It's not an EV company. What's your take on that? Is this more about the future of Tesla versus what's happened with regard to deliveries?
Well, certainly today, it makes for a better story to say it's more about the future than today, since he just had his first decline, right? And there's absolutely exciting things on the horizon potentially for Tesla. The robotic capabilities that he's showing off have been intriguing and could eventually be part of the average consumer's life. And certainly the self-driving and robotaxi has massive potential as a business model if he can master that. I think what worries me is that, again, he's not the only one in this space. There's a lot of energy being put into these areas from a lot of players globally and in the US. And it just seems on the self-driving front that every time we take a step forward, we seem like we take another step back. There's a lot that a computer cannot deal with yet when it comes to the changing environment of driving a car. And everyone, including Elon, knows that this is going to be a tough one to solve, and nobody really knows when we're going to solve it. And if someone's telling you they do know, they're lying to you. So I'd like to see Tesla, among other companies.
All right, I'm not going to argue that point there, in regards to self-driving and everything else. Until it shows up and we have it all the way ready. I understand everybody gets all excited every single new release. I've heard it every single new release that, hey, it's just right around the corner, for going on 6 years now. So until we actually get ourselves there, it is an incredible, he will solve it. First off, let me be very, very clear. He will solve it. But until we actually are there, it's hard to believe because we've heard next year for so many years now. And more importantly, it is an incredibly difficult, it may be one of the single most difficult problems to solve that we've ever had to solve, especially given some of the limitations with what we have hardware-wise and software-wise and everything else. Understand it's all accelerating. It's all getting better. Obviously, the data set is much larger. Everything is accelerating, but we don't know if it's 6 months away or is it 6 years away. We don't have a definitive timeline on that yet, and we can't point to anything definitive either in regards to that. And that's first piece is solving it. Then it's monetizing it after that. And thinking just immediately everybody's going to adopt it is silly. It's not true. Or thinking immediately it's going to just fly through regulation and everything's going to go nice and smooth and everybody's going to want it around the world. I would agree. I like that. But there's a whole segment of the population, and oh, by the way, at least here in the US, tends to be older, who are obviously the largest part of voters in terms of voting blocks here in the US, that don't want it, that don't want anything to do with that don't even really like EVs, much less an EV that's driving itself. They're very, very uncomfortable with that. So in terms of monetizing it at scale, which is where the exciting part is for me in regards to FSD, that's the exciting part, is whenever we see it monetized at scale. That wouldn't surprise me if that's a decade away. I hope it's not that far away, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens. So let's cut it down. Let's just say more realistically, it's a 5-year process from now. Well, guess what? I know Wall Street thinks ahead, investors think ahead. Nobody is paying 5 years in advance for this particular technology for what could be something that is, a huge market share in the future. Nobody's paying 5 years in advance for the money now. It's not happening, especially when you get up close to that $1 trillion market cap or around that $1 trillion market cap where you have to have institutional buyers. They're not paying, a 250 PE for a stock. They're just not. It's not happening. They're not dumping trillions into it. That is not how they invest. That is not how they operate. That is not what they do. And they're not going to pay 5 years in advance for something that Elon's been promising the previous 5 years or 10 years or whatever the heck it's been now and hasn't delivered on yet. Will he deliver? Yes, it's coming. But a lot of our excitement and a lot of the froth that comes into this stock specifically is around a lot of things that we aren't seeing yet. We're not going to see yet. That until we have a lot more clarity on, you aren't going to get huge institutional buyers buying into the stock in mass to where it could push us to that 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 4 trillion, $5 trillion market cap. It's just not going to happen until you start to see some of the fundamentals start to come to life. And right now, the fundamentals are going in the opposite direction. They are actually going backwards, declining margins, declining sales, all those other things of that nature. Now, we'll talk about what I think is going to happen in 2025 here in just a second. But that right now is the reality that large institutional investors are looking at in regards to what we had in 2024 and coming into 2025. And so they're being a little bit cautious right now.
Master this, I think it'd be a real, paradigm shift for human existence if we start getting self-driving cars. I don't think there's any accurate timeline on when that's going to happen. And in the meantime, we're back to all the problems we just talked about with competition and China and market share.
And then, Steve, when you think about the incoming administration and President-elect Trump and Elon Musk's relationship, now on the campaign trail, President-elect Trump made threats to remove incentives when it comes to electric vehicles. At the same time, some call him first friend. How is Musk positioned when it comes to this new administration? Will it be beneficial in your point of view? Is that how the market should read through this?
Well, there are two parts to that. Obviously, he's been one of the president's biggest supporters. Good heavens, he invested personally $250 million into Trump's campaign. So he's obviously going to have some close ties there. The big question, though, is are things like pulling the $7,500 tax increase, a tax rebate, really going to help Tesla? I don't think so. And then you get to the issue of tariffs. And again, the Chinese sell very few vehicles, almost none, some through Volvo in China today. But if the U.S. slaps big tariffs on Chinese cars, no one really cares. But if the Chinese respond in kind, slap tariffs on General Motors, Ford, Tesla selling cars in China, that could be a real risk point for Tesla. But the big point is, Tesla has to get new products into the market.
So I'll address that real quick here. You guys know I don't do politics here, don't care. Hopefully that helps us out as Tesla investors. Hopefully that gives him maybe an ear to kind of say, hey, before we do that, let's kind of think about this and some of the consequences to kind of avoid some of the things that the gentleman there just presented. So that right there to me would obviously make that investment worthwhile, obviously as a shareholder, because we know Tesla sells a lot of vehicles in China. And if all of a sudden there's a massive tariff on that, it is going to cause a significant decline in sales there in China of Tesla vehicles. And that obviously will be a significant problem for us, especially as we kind of transition. And this is really a good example of a very big transition year for Tesla, kind of moving in kind of the next stage of its future to not have that backbone of those Chinese autos. One, Shanghai makes a lot of Teslas. And then two, obviously the Chinese market, they sell a lot of cars there in China. So not having that thing or not having that lever or having a, separate tariff against them could significantly hurt. So hopefully, the relationship pays off and we're able to kind of keep those type things at bay and some things like that don't happen. But to say that that's completely off the table and that will never happen, that's not true either. It's definitely something you got to count in your calculus there in regards to when you're thinking about it. Now, would that be short-term? Of course it would. It would be a short-term headwind that would hurt the stock for a year or two. And then we move forward, obviously, over the long term. But it's definitely a possibility there as we kind of play this whole saber rattling game that we like to play with China all the time.
Sales for the Model Y and the Model 3 are slowing down. Cybertruck's been a flop. Tesla needs to do two things. They need to get a sub $30,000 Model Q into the market ASAP. There's talk they'll do that in 2025. I think Tesla desperately needs that to get revenues up. And they need to get approval for full self-driving in at least one city most likely Austin in the United States. If they can do those two things, I think that 25 could be a looking up year. Last point is this.
All right, so let's address those two there. I would agree. I think that I've said that last year, that this new model coming, whatever it ends up being here, there's a Model 3 refresh, doesn't matter. Whatever it ends up being here, I think that's critical. And more importantly, if it moves downscale, I think that is where Tesla's advantage is at its best. It's not at the upper end of the market, it's at the bottom end of the market there. And I think that right there can really drive revenue growth, maybe not margins as well as we like, but it can definitely drive that revenue growth coming into the future here in regards to that. And notice what he said in regards to, FSD or full self-driving or getting that approval in one city. Now, I would agree with that. I think they actually get that this year, in regard, whether it's Austin or, San Francisco, wherever. I think that they get it. But I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that that immediately means there's another $1 trillion market cap coming, because see, FSD's here and see, everybody's going to want it. And then see, it's going to drive this massive sea of revenue and profits to the bottom line. That is one approval in one city, basically for testing and refining the process even better than what it is. That is not scale mass adoption. And that's something that a lot of times the people that like to pump Tesla up kind of conveniently leave out. It just immediately jumped from this, and then all of a sudden 6 months later, it's going to be approved around the world. Everybody's going to have it, and everybody's going to want it. And see, here's your $2 trillion extra market cap this year. That's kind of where that narrative comes from, and it's simply not true. I think that right there would be great. That would be a great first step, and this is the reason why I'm not banking on FSD anytime soon in any sort of valuation that I do on Tesla, and same exact thing with Optimus as well. It was great whenever it comes. I think we're more than a decade from that being something that generates significant bottom line profits for Tesla, and that's okay. I'm owning this stock for the long term, not for the short term. So,
race for Tesla could be their torrid pace of their energy products division. That is up 100% year over year. Will probably add $10 billion to the top line. No other auto company other than BYD has an energy division anything close to that. So he's got a secret weapon there too.
Yep. Another thing that working on the background right now, I would agree. If you wanted to say it was an EV company, I agree. It is for now, but that energy is growing fast. I don't know. Let's say it makes up 30% next year of the revenue. And I don't know. I haven't done a projection or anything else like that. That's still significant growth. It's still moving further and further away from the EV line and more into other sectors and other projects. I think we just all got to keep in mind that these are all long-term things. If you're thinking 10 years out, this is exciting. If you're thinking 2 years out and people should be paying for that 10 years in 2 years, you're going to be severely disappointed with this stock.
Carl, I'll give the last word to you. We have about a minute left to chat. Let's talk a little bit about the future, because I think we've hammered home the idea of the competitive landscape when it comes to the Chinese EV makers. How important is the development and how quickly does it need to happen of FSD and robotaxi for Tesla when it comes to having an edge with regard to the competition?
I mean, that's huge. And I wonder if he's got an advantage over other players like Waymo and some of the other big players that are out there. A lot of people questioned his equipment, on the cars he's using, that he didn't want to use LiDAR. He just wanted to use pure cameras. A lot of people think that that's folly and that you're not going to get a capable self-driving car without some form of radar or LiDAR on the vehicle. He's pushing ahead as is. So, the proof will be in the pudding if he can get the certification as mentioned before anyone else. And his friendship with Trump, and we know he's been yelling about regulations a lot recently. So he could be positioned to be the first mover there. But it's critically important. Your question is it important? It's critically important.
All right, we shall see. Right now, investors are a believer, at least for the day.
All right, so we'll go ahead and stop the video right there. And let's kind of talk about where I see Tesla here in 2025 in regards to the stock itself. So I think there's a lot of exciting things coming. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting news. For me, the biggest news is whatever the heck this new model is that's coming second quarter this year. Obviously, we'll get updated guidance here shortly on the earnings call coming up here at the end of the January. Again, if you're a group member there, we go live for every Tesla earnings call there, talk about the numbers and everything else. We should be getting this year's guidance for that during that time. And of course, that right there is going to be significant in regards to how the stock moves, how it's going to work, what they project here for the next year in regards to that. And of course, that new model. That to me is the key this year. Lesser keys, obviously continued growth and energy. He's already said that that's, kind of hectic. You're going to have some massive months, some months that aren't nearly as massive. It's going to kind of be all over the map, and same exact thing with the profit margins with it. That's okay. As long as we see, year over year growth, basically you kind of take the average and kind of go, okay, we are still growing on that, like gangbusters on the energy side. That's a huge improvement there. Obviously, that new model coming in is a huge improvement there, but I'm not banking on anything significant with FSD. Like I said, maybe that first step of getting to start to test it in a large city, which of course that's going to introduce all the different insurances and a lot of other things of that nature, problems that are yet to be solved in regards to that, who's going to be covered, who's not, etc. We'll cross that bridge whenever we get there. We got to get the approvals first. And then secondarily, obviously, Optimus to me is going to create a lot of hype this year, but that is something that is a decade away and it's not something I'm building in either. So for me this year, this could be a solid year for Tesla. We'll see if they can get those margins back, which is the big key there. That really hurt us last year. Really hurt that EPS. Sure, we didn't have growth year over year, but we also saw those margins erode. And then we finally saw it turn around the past couple of quarters. Basically kind of flatline out and then obviously increase this past quarter. So if we get that again here in the fourth quarter where those margins are starting to come back, that is going to help maintain the stock and help us to kind of get back to a more fair value in regards to Tesla. It's definitely run out ahead of its valuation right now. We get back to that 30% growth rate, somewhere right up in there. We absolutely can see Tesla beat the market next year in regards to its return and obviously get a better return in Tesla than it is right now. Do I think I'm going to get a triple up again like I got on the shares of Tesla I bought last year? No, I don't see that happening again. Great if it does. I win regardless. I do think it has the chance, if those things fall in place, to really beat the market next year and give us a better return on the market, which is really all you're trying to do as an individual stock picker in the end, is just beating the market. And obviously some years you really beat the market, like the past couple of years where we've had triple digit gains, and the market's returned very well as well. I mean, 25% is nothing to scoff at there, but when you're returning 100+%, you're crushing the market there. But in the end, it's just about beating the market as an individual stock investor. And I do think Tesla's going to do that next year if they execute on that new model and if energy and a lot of those other things of that nature continue to move forward and continue to make significant progress. Now, if we struggle again and it's another flat year, you can bet your bottom dollar that we expect Tesla to really fall. And again, I can't predict that. We'll see what the earnings call has for us. We'll see what guidance is. More importantly, that's going to basically dictate to me how the stock is going to move over the next year and whether or not we're going to get an opportunity to buy it on a discount again, or is it going to run away from us once again? And again, if you want to watch that call in real time, you want to be a part of the best 6, 7, and 8-figure Discord out there, get 5 courses for free, get your free coaching, use our stock analyzer. Guys, there's so much involved in the group. Make sure you check out the pinned comment, see if a membership's right for you, and take advantage of that holiday sale before it ends. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market, and click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.